financials. So this is a time to really get serious about looking at your numbers. The second area is on lead generation and doing as much as we can for low cost to generate business. So Facebook Live videos, more video texting, so sending messages to our sphere with videos instead of just a text. People are loving that, and they're just trying to build a sense of community around this difficult time. And finally, I would say for us, it's just sitting, like actually doing things that we usually don't have any time for. Getting outside and walking more. I read something online about, I was in like, okay, we got to cook for like the next 2 months and we got to freeze like 8 batches of chili and we got to like military ration this stuff. And I read this amazing blog post about like, you have time that you're home now that you can slow cook and simmer and braise and do things that you never have time to do. So make meals that you've always wanted to do, that you've never had time to, and slow down and get to enjoy that time with family, meditating, journaling, doing those, things that we don't have time to do. So those are the 3 areas that we're sort of focused on in my world right now.
Okay. Debbie, what about you?
Now I'm unmuted. Very similar to Martha in some respects. I think behind the scenes, I'm a little bit organized a little bit differently than she is. And I think she's way more organized. That's a compliment. The biggest thing that I've been doing is taking advantage of the time that I have at home to really focus on learning more technology. I feel like that's where I've been very weak in the last year or so, and catching up with all the new video tours and Facebook Live and all the tools that are out there that I've sort of used as needed, but I've never really gotten to be an expert on and feel really comfortable with. And so I'm just really trying to focus on that. A lot of the rest of the things are very similar to what Martha said. Mark and I are both trying to limit in-person experiences with people as much as possible. We're happy to show a vacant house and do a video tour for clients out of town if we have to, but if there's no urgency to it, we really don't want to. Listing a house is coming soon today, and showings aren't going to start for 30 days. Just try to do as much virtually with that, and just really trying to protect our clients and our family and friends.
Super. Craig Fox, you're a BIC. Anything that you're seeing from the BIC side that we need to be aware of?
Well, we're just trying to give our agents whatever guidance we can. As a company, we're trying to offer more trainings right now on things that agents sometimes don't have time to do. Like, for example, Debbie just mentioned technology. If you have a good CRM, for example, there's probably a lot of tools in that CRM that you, as an agent, you might not be aware of that can help you generate business. You can start working on that now, and when the business does come back, when this mess blows over, there's going to be a lot of pent-up demand. I think a lot of buyers coming out of the woodwork, and you're going to be ready to handle that. So, I think we're trying to encourage our agents, keep your business going as best you can right now, but really prepare yourself for making up for lost business now, later in the year. So, take more trainings, learn new technologies, Facebook, all the social media stuff, and just really be ready to get your business going really quickly, because you don't want to have to ramp up when all the business comes back in a few months. You want to be ramping up right now.
Any of our attendees have any questions that they'd like to pose? Is anybody out there doing anything that they feel is really different that they haven't done before, that they found out is working? I know we're all trying things, and some of it doesn't work.
You can really go to our Facebook page and you'll see it as a post. It reminds you that this is happening. You can choose that and select that. It will notify you. And you guys will be able to do.
One at a time, please. If you'll, Cub, can you see who's raising their hand if we need to? So who was saying something? Oh, okay. All right. Yes. Now we can master this technology. I know we can, guys. Okay, go ahead.
So my name is Eva Oroch. I'm a new agent. Just had my first listing going live 2 weeks ago, so it's all new to me. And I would like to thank you, to all of you. I will be just listening and not talking much, but I'm trying to figure the way around in this situation. So thank you so much to everyone.
Well, I might throw out something that we just did on a listing that we have in Durham. And of course, Durham has, real estate's not essential in Durham. And I have a seller who has to sell because they're moving out of town and bought another house where they're going. So they're sort of in the middle. But we have trained them on how to use Zoom. And we're offering to do Zoom showings where both the showing agent, the buyer, and me as listing agent will be on the showing at the same time. And my sellers will actually take them on a tour of their house with the idea being that hopefully if they then really like it, that they'll be able to make an individual in-person appointment to do that. But that way, nobody is actually going to the house until they've seen it, and the couple of the agents who have buyers were comfortable with the fact that they were going to be on the call or be on the Zoom with their buyers, and I would be there, and the seller would be there only for the purpose of being the tour guide through the house. So looking forward to doing the first one of those tomorrow, actually, with a buyer, and hopefully that'll work out. Don't know if anybody else is doing anything like that.
Hey, Pat, it's Jessica. Yeah, I actually have a document that I send out to people that shows them how to set up Zoom and step-by-step what they have to do to use Zoom. It's a real easy document, and I'm happy to share that with our association if you want me to forward that to Cub, and maybe we can get that into wherever, anything that goes out, we can amend that and put that in there if people are interested.
Okay, super. Yeah, please do that. Is anybody using, or have they used the COVID-19 addendum on any of their current contracts? The one that the NC AR put out.
We've had some come through my office. I've seen some of our agents are using them. We haven't had any that I'm aware of where they've actually invoked the clause yet, but I've seen some that have been executed as part of contracts.
Is everybody familiar with that addendum?
Yes.
Yes.
Everybody's seen that. Okay.
Most of the agents are using 30 days in that, by the way. I'm wondering if anybody else has had any other experience other than the additional 30 days.
I've seen
days here. Randy Cox. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I just used that document for the first time this morning, and we used 30 days.
Okay.
Most of the ones I've seen have been either 30 or 45 days.
Okay.
So for some of our vacant homes listings, though, we have not. We've had agents in multiple offer situations ask if we would like it to be used. And given that I think it makes a lot of sense when the sellers are in the home and things, illness may impact their move. But for some of our vacant properties, our clients think offer is more competitive without it because the earnest money is still in play. And of course, we would both already have that 14 days built in, where sometimes we're seeing longer closings being bumped out. But for some of our sellers, they don't, especially if they're not in the home, they don't want to give up that earnest money if they don't have to.
Debbie, how are your sellers reacting to the lowered number of showings, which at least according to showing time, there seems to be a lot less showings?
It's not been too bad. I mean, when this happened and as it's been going on, we had a couple of listings that were already under contract. So we're just working really hard to get those through. And then a couple of our listings, we were lucky or not lucky. They've been on for a while, and so showings were a little slow anyway. And the seller's expectation is that showings were just not going to pick up just yet. But the little one that we put on in Briar Chapel, right as all this was happening, had several showings the first day and went under contract right away. So I haven't had too much trouble managing disappointed sellers with activity yet.
Well, hopefully everybody. What about you, Martha? Are you carrying many listings right now?
So we don't have a lot. The few in the hotter price points that we've listed in the last few weeks have actually, we added a lot of precautions to our showing. So if you have booked a showing on one of our listings, you'll see that you must have looked at your clients must have looked at the 3D tour, reviewed all the disclosures and the online brochure, floor plan, and be pre-approved before entering the property. And then we of course have safety precautions like we're going to have, if an occupied home, have all of the lights on, all of the doors ajar in the home, so that really there's no need to touch anything except that front door lock, and to wipe that down when you leave. So one of our listings, I guess we were still just in that phase of don't gather in more than 50 people 2 weeks ago. That home received, in the 300s, received 7 offers. And then last week in Downing Creek, again, multiple offers. So that was before the stay home orders came through. We accelerated a lot of our timelines with that anticipation that that was going to happen. Other listings, though, I really don't see a lot of drop off. I think this market demand is so strong. There's such a need for, it was already so tight this spring, so many multiple offers, that the people who need housing are still needing it. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see it. We haven't had a new listing go live since the stay home orders came on, though.
Has anybody run into any issues with i.e. with either tenants not being able to move out or sellers not being able to move out because of the issues that have been caused by the coronavirus, where homes are not going to be available for them to move in on the other side? Has anyone run into that? I know I've had some people who thought they were going to have tenants moving out that aren't moving out because there's no place for them to go.
I had a seller that her moving company canceled on her, and so they said it was for indefinitely, and she wasn't able to schedule somebody new. Her buyer was coming in from California who also couldn't come across country. So actually the buyer and seller worked it out, and they accelerated closing because they were both concerned something might happen where it couldn't go through at a later date. And so they both agreed that the buyer is letting my seller stay in the house rent-free indefinitely until she can get her movers scheduled, and then until the buyer can travel across the country.
Hey, Pat.
Yes.
I have a condo in Meadowmont that I'm getting ready for the market, and we were supposed to already be on the market, but they're moving into Carolina Meadows, and they will not allow movers to bring any items into their new apartment there that they've closed on. So until that movement is allowed, we're holding off. So that's where the movers are coming into play locally.
Yeah, I've seen several, and for anybody who hasn't had closing or have closing set up into the future, I'm hearing lots of issues with moving companies right now.
Yeah.
With access to properties, and some of them not feeling like they can, and think if someone's moving to an area, you've got someone going to one of these high infection areas like New York, you know, Louisiana, some place like that, where they're saying, no, we're not going to schedule moves to or from there, which is creating some issues. So from a timing standpoint, you need to make sure your sellers are all set up and your buyers are all set up with movers, because some of them it's been hard to schedule.
Yeah.
Pat?
Yes.
Hi, Ina here. I wanted to answer your earlier question as far as showing drop-offs. I've had 2 sellers ask whether we should go off the market right now because they've seen a drop-off in showings and they're worried about their days on the market accruing. And what else? I've had 2 offers come in where overnight the people called their lenders and the lenders have lowered what they're allowed to get. So it's definitely affecting things.
Yes.
Pat, maybe we should remind everybody also that today, being April 1st, MLS rules have changed. And if you are having sellers who are reluctant to have their homes on the market, instead of pulling them off the market, they can go to no showings indefinitely. They can't go to coming soon because they've already been on the market, but they can go to no showings and the days will stop. Isn't that right? The days will stop. They won't show through this time period until you activate again for showings. They can still be on the market.
I think that new clear policy for the coming soon category, which now goes into an active status, which allows a house to be pushed out by the IDX. If you're not familiar with that, it's pushed out but it cannot be shown during that period of time. I think does maybe allow you to start promoting and marketing a house, but not anticipate it automatically goes active in 30 days if you don't do something in between. But I think that's a good way for people to start pushing a listing out there is available, putting it out there in the marketplace. My thought is I'm not as concerned right now with days on the market, because I think that most people will look at that and understand this was sort of an unusual market. And maybe that extra time may not necessarily be a big issue as it is in the past, but that's just my opinion. I don't know that. We'll find out in about 30 days. Questions, comments? Anybody else got things that they're doing? Is anybody showing, who has got experience recently showing property, actual in-person showings, and was there anything that you learned from that as a result of doing that you can share with the group?
So I showed a property on Sunday in Pittsburgh, and it was nice because the sellers provided hand sanitizer, Clorox wipes, gloves, and they had very specific instructions as to what they wanted done. They had all the lights on and all the doors ajar, so we didn't have to touch anything, and we had to use the Clorox wipes to wipe down the lockbox when I was finished. And then they had a trash can outside of the house for us to dispose of the gloves and the wipes, which I think is great, but I'm finding I don't have access to all of those supplies and haven't been able to find them. So I find that's the challenging part. I have a listing that's going to come on the market this week. It's vacant, and I don't have the supplies to provide to put in that listing. So I was just going to put in our showing instructions for agents to bring their own hand sanitizer or wipes. And then hopefully if they don't have them, then hopefully they'll decide or choose not to come, because we just feel like we need to kind of cover ourselves and promote safety, and hopefully agents that don't have the supplies to do the showing, I'm hoping that they won't attend.
Does anybody, does anyone have any restrictions that are being put on them by their companies in terms of the number of homes they can show in a day? I've started to hear some companies are saying a buyer can only look at one house a day because they're trying to get agents in-person showings to one house a day. Anything like that?
Pat, this is Tom Wiltberger. Can you hear me?
Hey, Tom.
We're not limiting that, but to run through a few of your questions and part of the discussion here, we are going to be using Coming Soon as much as we can this month to promote houses, but not show them until the stay-at-home order is off. We have seen one termination, not because the movers bailed, but the seller didn't want movers in her house. That was initially resisted by the buyers, but they acquiesced and the contract was terminated. Earnest money and due diligence returned by the seller, who of course is terminating after the due diligence period. We have seen other contracts, just a few where dates have been pushed. But lastly, on the showings, we decided to go ahead and publish a set of company guidelines that we are attaching in the documents section of our listings and referencing in our agent remarks that serves as a consent form for buyers, sellers, and showing agents to consent to make sure that they're following the safety protocols if they're showing our listings. So I would just ask for everybody's cooperation on that. If they're showing a Terra Nova listing, you'll be receiving it either via email or it'll be attached in the documents section that says, hey, if you're going to show your house, here's the rules.
Super. Would you be willing to send a copy of that to Cub, and we'll just share any of these documents like this with everybody? Maybe there's some things out there that they will find that they like that they might want to incorporate.
I'm happy to do that. Sure.
Super. Craig, anything that you're seeing on your side? Anything you want to add into from?
Well, we're just trying to educate our agents, and whenever we get any information from a realtor board or just general information about safety procedures that you should follow, we're forwarding that out to our agents, advising them to, follow the law. But we're not forcing any restrictions on our agents. We're letting them, basically run their business and just do it in a safe manner, encouraging them to do that. Also encouraging them to talk with their own attorneys if they're not sure about whether they can do business in a certain jurisdiction, because some of the wording in the, particularly in the Durham County order and somewhat in the Orange County order is a little bit confusing and conflicting. So we're just telling them to, we're not trying to be lawyers and telling them whether they can show or not show homes, but just advising them to get the best information they can.
Pat, can I make a couple of comments?
Sure, please.
Randy Cox. So from a company standpoint, some of what we have done is to try and put our agents and our clients in the best possible position by going as much virtual as we can and actually using we'll call it sequence in that if they have an interested buyer in properties, that they narrow down the number of properties through the virtual tour process. And then if there is an interest that we have tried to limit to one showing, physical showing in a given day, but we have seen where it came down to 2 properties and the agent showed the one that was preferred, and then because the buyer couldn't make up their mind, went and showed the second property, and they were able to then come to terms with which property they were wanting to purchase. And so all of that falling under what and we are trying to educate our agents on what the individual cities, municipalities, and then obviously the governor's order to involve safe distancing once we get to a place where we're actually physically showing a property. There's going to be hopefully some tools, some additional tools and resources that come out through the TMLS, hopefully this week, that will allow for us to do virtual open houses, virtual tours, but there will be some categories that you can indicate in the TMLS as new categories so that we can better do our job and stay in compliance with what are the new rules and regulations. I really want to go ahead and applaud our entire real estate community in taking initiative and using common sense, at least for the most part. I know there's occasionally something happening out there where we all look at each other and say, really, did that just happen? But I would say for the most part, hats off to this entire realtor community for embracing the change and trying to figure out how to navigate these waters. A couple of other points that I would want to just make here is obviously we're all in this together, and that's just not this realtor community, but every business that's out there is being impacted, and not in a positive way for the most part. But we are the voice of reason. We do touch more people probably than most. And there are restaurant businesses out there, and obviously people need to eat, and they're still trying to live their lives as best they can. It was communicated that some of the restaurant groups have come together, collaborating to provide meals, in particular in Scarborough, and charging $30 to $40 for feeding a family of 4. And last week, I think the first day that this was rolled out, I don't know that my numbers are 100% accurate, but I think they're pretty close. They were able to produce 1,000 meals in day one at $30 to $40 per family. And then I think day 2 was somewhere around the 1,500 meals, and most recently produced 2,000 meals. And so, I would ask that we continue to communicate those type of messages too, and help to keep these other businesses as well as ourselves in business. It's definitely going to be a community effort once we come out of the stay-at-home order. And we're all going to have to get on this train together to bring this economy back. And it's not going to be easy. And so continue to be the voice of reason out there. Hopefully our association can provide some of the information you need. And I would tap into Ashley and Cub and Pat as the president of the association. I know our company is willing to share a Zoom presentation on how to use Zoom. We are more than willing to do that. I'll be more than happy to share what is some of the language that we put together on the new TMLS rules, clear cooperation policy that NAR is rolling out. I just got that today, and I can send that to Cub, and he can cut and paste and put those procedures out there for all of our members to see. And I wish everybody the best of luck through this challenging time. It's definitely now what I would consider a new normal, and so we pretty much know that tomorrow is going to look like today, and the day after tomorrow is probably going to look pretty much like today, at least for a little while. And if we can all work together, I know we'll get through it. We'll come out the other side, and we'll be bigger, stronger, and faster. And so I thank everyone for their efforts through this. It's not easy.
And I wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of the notice that the Durham Association of Realtors put out, saying that attention Durham County realtors, all Durham County in-person showings and open houses must cease according to Durham County order that went into effect last Sunday, March 29th, and will remain in effect until April 29, 2020, April 30, 2020. They are saying that Durham County is going to, police are going to enforce that order. And I understand actually in a separate message I got from somebody at Durham is that Durham was going to ask that TMLS ask showing time to say that they cannot schedule any in-house showings. I mean, any in-person showings on any house in Durham County. I don't necessarily know if that's happened yet, but certainly showing property in Durham is going to become much more problematical and probably isn't something that you need to plan on anytime soon.
Is that just Durham City or Durham County-wide?
I believe it is, let's see. Oops. Sorry.
It's Durham County.
That is Durham County.
Durham County.
Thank you.
Yes. DRAR, Pat, is still working to negotiate that.
Right.
For the members and for the community. Right now, though, they have explicitly stated this morning that will be enforced.
Actually, the email goes on saying it is both Durham County and city order, so that they're referring.
So now they're both compatible. Okay.
Well, the Durham City just falls under Durham County now. I don't think the Durham
That's
City order even really exists anymore.
Well, no, actually, the original order was from Durham City, and then the Durham County order actually came after that.
Right.
And so for a while they were actually two different. There was no order from Durham County, and then Durham City limits was one thing, which is most of Durham County. But then you also get up north of there, you were getting into Rougemont and Bahama and some of those other places like that were not covered by a Durham City order, and now everything in Durham County is now covered.
Yeah, do you know if home inspections are included in this? I know that titles, they mentioned titles and appraisals, but are home inspections included in, are they still allowed in Durham?
They were not listed as an essential business separately. Closing attorneys were. Okay, financial services were included in that, but I don't know. My photographer that I deal with said that they were not going to be doing photos in Durham County based upon the way they read it. But that doesn't mean, that was just their own personal interpretation. I think there's going to be some individual vendors who are going to need to make those choices on their own. But before I committed anything to any buyer or seller about availability of services, I might want to check on that before I committed to that. I think there's going to be some real issues with houses under contract that have ongoing issues, inspections, appraisals, all kinds of things. For example, with their malware issue that they had, you couldn't get any septic or well permits from their records, and now that they're finally being able to access some of that stuff, they have this new order in place. So it's going to be real interesting. I've got a closing in Durham that's supposed to happen in 2 weeks, and we're trying to work our way through some of that.
Pat, one of the things that I see in this opportunity, thinking about shifts in the past, is the economics for the real estate community, for us as individual business owners, around how we serve, consult, and prepare our spheres, databases around this shift. Because Ina mentioned days on market, Martha mentioned the budget,
right.
Get lean with your budget. And I think that the reality is something that deserves a nod. in the past, we've chased the market down, and the impact of the economics around this shift starts with longer days on market because of an inability to access the properties. It's still days on market, longer time, typically impacts what? Price. And so when we're contacting our databases, what if we have a conversation around, you know, what are you seeing? And how are the economics in your world being impacted here? Because there are opportunities for us to help people do the math and realize I have X number of months of house payments left. Maybe one of the two lost their job already, or one of them's job is getting shaky or iffy, so that we can help people now rather than on the other side of this when there's this bottleneck of listings that are going to pop out on the other end. And we do have real buyers in this market right now.
Yeah.
And so getting really creative on the listing side, getting really into a consultative mode, not an advisory mode. We're not CPAs, we're not financial advisors, we're not attorneys. At the same time, we do have a responsibility and we do provide value, and we can make a difference in this time for individual people that can soften the impact, the long tail impact of this now short. And it's really a now conversation, I think. And as companies, we have the opportunity to have these conversations with our agents as well. Because for those of us who have weathered these storms before, you know, we have a better idea of what to expect. It doesn't you know, what started this is different each time. At the same time, there is a pattern, there is a bell curve with most things. So what does that look like? And just helping define that and help our agents with their businesses so that we come out together on the other side of this.
Well, in May with that, you said a couple of things, and Martha and several of you guys have said it. Number one, I never seem to have had time before to spend as much time reaching out to my sphere by phone as I do now, and everybody that I reach out to now seems really glad to hear from me.
Exactly.
I think we've got some great information to share with the stimulus package. The forbearance provisions that are in there for mortgages for people who've lost their jobs and whatnot is fairly significant on Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac loans. And if you're not familiar with what some of those things are, you need to probably look them up. We had a link on our email earlier this week on that, but talked about some of the forbearance on some mortgage payments and so you get up to a year if somebody loses their job as a result of the COVID virus and stuff like that, COVID-19 virus. So there's some things that we can be talking to people about. They might be in trouble and not know that there's some ways out of it. Also, National Association of Realtors work really diligently on the stimulus package, and although there's some hoops to jump through, individual independent contractors, realtors who lose income as a result of the coronavirus do qualify for some of the funds underneath that stimulus package. And so I would think if anyone's, you know, and I know there are times when you're closing to closing and month to month on this business, and sometimes you don't need to worry about that. But if that is an issue, there's some help out there that's available to not just real estate companies but down to individual independent contractors. So you need to take a look at that and make sure you understand what those things might be. But I think this is a great opportunity. Craig mentioned it. There's lots of training available, both all kinds, but there's, I like to point out that the National Association of Realtors is offering C2X, which is a certification course. It is included in your dues. It's a great class, a great series of classes, and you get a certification for that. I would strongly encourage people to take advantage of that. And Realtor Property Resource It's got some great training classes that they do, and actually are typically broken up into about 20 to 30-minute segments. And there's some great tools out there that hopefully when the market goes back, and it will come back, we'll be fully ready to go and ready to use some of the new stuff that we've learned.
Absolutely.
But anybody else seen issues with that they need help with now that we can point you to, or that we can get some feedback from other people out there? We got about 60, 70 people on this call, so maybe we can get some other ideas out there.
Pat, I'm sorry if I missed this already. I jumped in about 20 minutes late. Has anybody had any experience with this new COVID-19 form addendum that goes with from Zip Forms?
We touch on that briefly, but it's a couple of agents who have used it. If you want to I think it's probably worth repeating if someone doesn't mind talking about what their experience has been in terms of some of the deadlines and stuff that you've used.
So you have any particular questions as it relates to the addendum? Anything that comes to mind that's a concern?
We only just had somebody presented with it today. And so we're all just trying to wrap our brains around it a little bit. I thought, if anybody has encountered it, gleaning from their experience would certainly be helpful.
I mean, I've seen a few go through our office with either 30 or 45 days. I haven't seen an example yet where someone actually invoked the clause and used it. One question that a lot of our agents have been asking is, what happens to the 14-day grace period you have at the end of a contract? And if you read section 6 of that addendum, it does clearly state that if you invoke the clause and end up delaying due to COVID-19, the 14-day grace period no longer applies. So the new closing date is the closing date. If you do not invoke the clause, the 14-day period is still there for non-COVID-19 delays at the end of a closing like it would normally be. So that's the main thing that agents need to be aware of, just make sure they read that paragraph 6 carefully.
Thank you, Craig. That's very helpful.
Sure.
Yeah, and basically what that does, and you need to be, it depends on which side of the transaction you're on, so you need to be careful with it. Obviously, it basically results in a return of the earnest money. You keep the due diligence fee. So you need to be aware of that. I just canceled a contract on one of my listings, fell through over this because the people just got totally and completely freaked out. We had not used the COVID-19, but they're walking away from $10,000 earnest money because they just didn't feel like they didn't want to keep going forward. They didn't want to close. If we had that COVID-19 in there, they might have been able to. They would have been able to request their earnest money back. So you need to be read through it and understand what it says, because it does impact on your seller in terms of they could end up agreeing to that, have someone walk away from the contract after the due diligence and only end up with the due diligence money. So you need to make sure you're aware of how all that works together.
Yeah, I think one big question is going to be what does it take to invoke that clause? Like, the buyer's freaking out probably isn't a sufficient reason to,
right.
It has to be some legitimate, COVID-19 consequence. So that might be something that ends up in some, mediation or whatever to get that figured out.
The problem I see with using the clause is we really don't have a handle on how long it is going to take. I mean, it's one thing to say that appraisers can still appraise. It's another thing to actually get the appraiser to agree to come out. We've got inspectors, we've got a lot of people who are moving parts here who may or may not have a willingness to leave their home. So if you start minimizing the number of services available, you start adding days, and a lot of days, to the situation. And the clause, the way it is very finite. We've got, if you put in 30 days, at the end of 30 days, that's it. and you may have parties that really just want to keep it going. I didn't know for sure, and the conversations that I've had with other realtors about it, including somebody from the forms committee, was like, well, can we still, by mutual agreement, extend the closing date? And I didn't really get an answer, and I'm wondering if anybody else has an answer for that.
Think if it's
Why wouldn't you be able to?
right,
Yeah.
if it's mutual agreement, why wouldn't you be able to?
Because I
you
mean,
can
it's
agree to take
negotiated
the
between the parties.
to take the clause off and change anything in the offer to purchase, right?
You can do an addendum or an amendment.
Yeah. Well, I certainly think that we'll probably have more questions about this in 30 days or than we have right now, because we've
And
just
more
put it into
answers.
effect. Yeah, and more answers. I think Craig's got a legitimate, I don't think just because somebody's freaked out. I do have a buyer that I was working with who said they're postponing buying because they've been asked by their company to take a 20% cut in pay till this, for the foreseeable future, and they obviously didn't want to go ahead and move forward on buying a house, but they were real close to doing that beforehand. Now that would have been someone who would have been covered, I think, by COVID-19 if we'd written a contract with that. They would say, oh well, we've had a change in our income as a result of COVID virus. We can provide that documentation from our, from our employer. But I do think it's going to take some sort of documentation that the reason they're avoiding the contract or invoking the COVID-19 addendum is going to be for some reason that can be demonstrated, in some sort of written form.
You know,
Anybody
what comes to mind for me, Pat, is an addendum is a tool.
Right.
And so we know that when we're using a tool, we have to be careful or we can hurt ourselves or someone else with it, right?
Right.
And so it's having a real consultative conversation with the buyer to help ask, emotionally, are you connected and committed to seeing this through? Because if there's a waffle there, if there's a pause, then they're not. And so unpacking that and really digging into that could prevent an emotional reaction somewhere along the way. If something changes with the economics or health or well-being of the parties around that transaction being able to be fulfilled, then that's a different conversation. And in my mind, the purpose for that addendum. So I think it's helping people separate the logic from the emotion. This is an emotional time. But yes, acknowledge it and then get into the logical side so that if there is true commitment, you can move forward and use that as a tool that can help people, see it through or not if something does develop.
I agree. Any other comments?
Just a couple more. I would just 30,000 foot view here, not getting into the weeds or anything. I think we all need to acknowledge that COVID-19 addendum, there's nothing obligating the seller to sign it. It's out there as a resource. And then the other thing that I would comment on, I don't know who said it, but there's nothing prohibiting a buyer and a seller amending the contract without the addendum, without the COVID-19 addendum, just acknowledging that they need to move things out for whatever reason. And so I go back to, as a realtor community representing both buyers and sellers, continue to champion being the voice of reason through all of this. It's a challenging time, but just recognize that the COVID-19 addendum, you don't have to sign it if you're a seller. There are some rules to the game once you do sign it. And then use the amendment to contract if there's things that need to be changed, just to make sure that we move the transaction along and hopefully bring to settlement and closing. Maybe it's 60 days later, but everyone's in a good place. So
And
that
read
would be my 2 cents.
I'm sorry, and read the comment that was just made. Cub and Ashley pointed out that there is a link on YouTube to a video explaining the COVID-19 amendment or addendum, and it is by Will Martin.
Will Martin, yeah.
I see that we've got Peter Winkler on our conference right here, and as a new home marketing representative, what are you seeing on your side? What are you seeing different? What are the expectations there for you guys, Peter?
I think we're getting a lot of questions from folks that are under contract, wondering if COVID is going to have an impact on timelines for building, which we've been able to address. I think our biggest concern right now, and I think this applies to everybody on the call, is that people, just like prior to what happened on Monday with the stay-at-home order, people want to get out of their homes, and looking at homes, walking through homes, going to look at their homes under construction. We are very concerned, and I think the Durham notice was a big part of that. We're very concerned that we're going to get shut down. We've all been given a privilege to continue to operate as essential businesses. And we're very concerned that that people walking through their homes or walking through other people's homes, if that is discovered, that we could really all be shut down. And so we just put out a notice to everyone under contract with us that only critical meetings are allowed. Don't be coming out on the Sunday afternoon to go take a look. Even though we have vacant homes, that doesn't mean that they're exempt from the same showing rules that apply to occupied homes. Overall, we've had a great few weeks. I just signed 3 contracts yesterday, so things continue to move forward. Obviously, we've got our eye on April. I think, again, our biggest concern is that now the media stories are going to start cranking out. I saw the one on CNBC this morning about mortgage applications dropping 24%. The more that type of information gets out there, I think it's going to cause a lot more buyers to take a pause. And we're actually still seeing a lot of activity. So we'd like everybody to, play it fair and play it safe. We have very strict guidelines on how we're operating, just like with UR. We just have the flexibility that most of our homes are vacant. But we still are being very careful in how we operate, not only with showing agents, but with our buyers as well. So our models are locked, but we have somebody on site every day, 7 days a week, to deal with the folks that really do need to buy. We are not using the COVID addendum. We've had that question come up, but it really doesn't apply towards the builder contracts. It refers to due diligence money, which we don't use, and it refers to the 2T, which we don't use. So we have chosen just to say, you know what, we're all figuring this out on a daily basis. If something happens, we'll figure it out. It's a partnership. We all have the same goal in mind, and we will work it out. But we can't rely on a piece of paper that really doesn't apply in our situation with new construction. And so we've declined those requests. We've really only gotten maybe 1 or 2 requests to use it. But we've found ways around it.
I know we only have a couple minutes left, but I can feel the energy is sort of somber and could have been accused of being an eternal optimist in my past. So just take this for what you will. But it is scary. I mean, I think all of us are scared and have fear around both, what things like April and May, months like that are going to look like for us. We sell a lot of houses, but we have a lot of folks, right? Like I'm looking at things like the the paycheck protection, the grants for keeping team members on, and those kind of things. So please don't think that I don't have fear or challenges either. At the same time, I just want to kind of go back to what I was talking about at the beginning, that we have time that we almost never have to make our businesses stronger, to make ourselves healthier, more centered, to spend time with our families, to improve their business processes. There's a lot of benefits to this time, all the way up to the gentle the break that our planet has. So yes, it's tough, and we are all in this together because have a unique, our market and our businesses are unique compared to anyone else. But if if you're having a hard day or you have questions, I just want you to feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help in any way possible. I'm home. I've been locked in for 16 days now. So just, you're not alone. And if you need someone to talk to, we have each other. And we were on a previous call, I was just saying, even though right now we're all kind of mourning and suffering with what we're losing, whether it was the first night of this was my daughter's 10th birthday party being canceled, and graduations and weddings, and not even being able to have a funeral if you needed to. Like, there's so much that we're mourning, and I truly believe at the same time that when we reach the end of this and we have to drive back and people are blowing up our phones to have 12 showings in a day, that we're going to be mourning this time. So I just wanted to leave with that.
Well, I will. I probably have more experience with 50 years in real estate.
You definitely have more experience than me, Pat.
Than anybody out there, and I can tell you a couple of things. Number one, I've been through lots of downturns in real estate. I was in real estate when the gas prices went to, in '76, when we had the gas shortage crisis. I was when interest rates were 18%, when the dot-com bubble in 80, with the technology bubble in 87 burst. And then, we've had the S&L crisis where 1 out of 3 S&Ls failed. We've had all kinds of things like that have always impacted the real estate business. But one of the things that always happens is people still have to find a place to live. They still need our help. And we've got to be prepared when the market gets better to know that, okay, all that time that I was, I told someone one time, I said, one of the things I like best about real estate is when I work, I get to work as much as I want to. And when I don't have to work, I try to take advantage of that time. And so this is a point to take advantage of this. I think there's a lot of people out there that got really good ideas. Hopefully we'll continue to offer some of these town hall meetings, because I think in 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to have some different information than we have now. But the thing is, we're important. The reason that we're essential is we're a big part of what happens in people's lives. Real estate is the greatest single way for people to build wealth in this country. And when these market changes come along like this, that impacts on that. And we've got to get back to work as soon as we can when it's able. So I appreciate everybody coming today. Anybody got any last comments or thoughts they want to share?
You're really old, Pat.
I really am, but I look really good.
He's no older than me.
Pat, there was one other thought.
There was another question. I'm sorry.
It was more of a parting thought. If folks are looking for what we've done at Terra Nova and launched just today, if you want to check out our Instagram or Facebook page, we're starting to find new creative ways to make revenue, and we're launching a line of leisure wear. So you can buy a Terra Nova branded Snuggie for your stay-at-home laptop use. So check them out. I'm using this headset to take the orders. It's 3 payments of $19.99, and they're wonderful. So check them out on Instagram and Facebook.
Oh, Tom, that's too much. Did you or Mariana come up with that?
No comment.
Well, thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. I want to thank Craig and Debbie and Martha for agreeing to help host this, and appreciate everybody's comments, and look forward to seeing you guys again real soon, but virtually.